What up, my friends? Welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing a book wrap-up video, which is one of my favorite videos to do. I'm going to share with you every book that I read in the month of December, and I'm also going to share with you some of the goals that I'm setting when it comes to reading for the year 2025. When I do these book wrap-up videos, just to let you know, I do give a brief summary on the book, but I never do any spoilers. I share my rating scale on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, and then I also share my spice rating scale on a scale of 1 to 5 peppers. That way you know what to expect when heading into this. Although I should say technically it's 0 to 5 peppers, because if there's no spice, I'll let you know. We have, I believe, 16 total books to cover today, so I'm going to hop right into it. And there is a good mixture of holiday books that I'll be covering. So if you want to start adding some to your list for next year, or just hold on to that Christmas spirit, I have you covered with quite a few holiday book recommendations. Okay, first up is the book The Christmas List by Maren Moore. This one is a shorter book. It's only around 230 pages. This one follows Josie, who is a teacher, and she has a new little girl in her class named Lucy, whose dad comes to pick her up, and Josie is shocked to find out that her dad is actually her first love, the one who broke her heart. Lucy asks Josie to please help them out with the town Christmas festivities because Josie is known as the Queen of Christmas and she cannot let this little girl down, but she has to guard her heart around Wyatt. Okay, so this one was really adorable. I really liked it a lot. It's very Hallmarky though, so if you're not into like the Hallmark style books, this one probably wouldn't be for you. Not super heavy on the plot, more about the vibes, if you will. I gave it 4 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice, so there are some explicit scenes, but it doesn't take up too much real estate. It's got a second chance romance vibe, which isn't always my favorite, but I felt like the way that it was done in this one felt very healthy, very mature. So overall, this one's really cute, and like I said, if you're still holding on to that Christmas spirit and you want to pick up a book, this one would be a cute one. All right, the next one that I read was called A Seasonal Pursuit by Rebecca Connolly. This one is a historical Christmas romance. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice, so it is completely closed door romance. So this one follows Rose, who has come to terms with the fact that she is going to be a spinster and that she's never going to end up marrying. And she settled into the idea that a life of solitude is going to be what's best for her. And she suddenly has a way of leveling that up when her great aunt lets her know that she is going to be leaving her cottage in the country. However, it comes with a stipulation that Rose must find a love match, which is in direct conflict with what she envisioned for her life. This one was just so beautiful. I would recommend reading it any time of year. It definitely has heavy Christmas vibes, and it was really cool being able to step back in time and hear how they spent Christmases. And I just am so fascinated by the idea of like these societies back in the day when their entire lives were revolving around socializing with one another. It's just wild to me because I feel like nowadays, like most people flake out on each other constantly when it comes to socializing and barely make time for one another. So it's just really interesting that these people would all go to an estate to stay there for several days and just fill up their days socializing with one another, playing games and attending dinners and dressing up all fancy. It's fascinating to read. I loved this story. I loved the connection between the characters. I loved the background characters. It was just one of those timeless, beautiful stories that just had all the charm and wit that I look for. The next book that I read was a thriller, and this was called The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This one I ended up giving a 3-star rating and 0 out of 5 on spice, so there's no spice. However, there is some adult content discussed, so I would just read content warning before heading into it. This one is about Barbara, who has disappeared at the camp that her family owns. They're an incredibly influential family, and they have a lot of secrets hidden behind closed doors. As the town is rallying together to try and find her, a lot of questions start to surface because years prior, her older brother had gone missing as well. So this one is very difficult for me to talk about, like sharing my thoughts on it, because of the fact that I don't give spoilers when I do reviews. So I kind of can't explain why it was only a 3-star for me. So I'll just say that I didn't think that it was worth my time, and I did not enjoy the characters whatsoever. There were a lot of jumping timelines in this book, which generally, to me, when authors do jumping timelines and jumping point of views, it's usually so you can pay attention and pick up on the clues and use that to try and figure out the ending. By the time I got to the end, I didn't understand what the purpose of all the jumping around was. That's pretty much all I can say without giving spoilers. It's just not one that I would recommend. However, I know that a lot of people really loved this one. I was really excited about it because it sounded super creepy and super awesome because it's about a disappearance at a summer camp in the woods. It just sounded like something that I would like, but I just felt like the execution wasn't there. The next one I'm super excited to talk about. This one's called The Love Haters by Katherine Center. This one was actually sent to me by the author and publisher. However, I'm sharing a completely honest review 100% voluntarily. This one releases towards the end of May, and I would 100% recommend either pre-ordering it or at the very least getting it on your Goodreads want to read list. This one was a 5-star read for me, 0 out of 5 on Spice, so it's a complete closed door romance. This one follows Katie, who works in the filmmaking industry, and she's approached by her supervisor to take on a project involving a Coast Guard rescue swimmer who just happens to be his brother. However, when she shows up to the assignment, she finds out that the Coast Guard swimmer is not exactly excited that his brother has sent somebody in his place. This one was one of those books that immediately from chapter 1, I knew that I was going to love it. I knew that I was already hooked in. I did not want to be away from the characters. It was just one of those books that you sink into completely seamlessly. I fell in love with the characters so quickly, and I just thought that the witty banter and there was like a dry humor about it that just worked out so well. There was also a lot of emotional things that were being worked through, but what Katherine Center always wows me with is her ability to balance comedic relief right when you need it after some emotional discoveries. So it feels like you're getting more out of the book, but it's not taking away from the entertainment factor. There's never a point where my heart is racing too much or it has too much of like a melancholy tone. She just does this beautiful way of making everything still feel light and fresh, even when discussing some of the things that are a little bit heavier. This one in particular dives a lot into how we treat ourselves. I think that she went through it in such a beautiful way, and so it gave me an opportunity to really look at the way that I treat myself. And I'm just so grateful that I got selected to read this book ahead of time because it just was the perfect way for me to head into 2025 with some tools to treat myself with a little bit more grace and kindness. The next one was called Baking Under the Mistletoe by Ashley Shepard. This one was a spicy Christmas romance. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 on Stars, 1 out of 5 on Spice. This one follows Olivia, who is in charge of all of the Christmas festivities at her job, and her boss is incredibly grouchy. When they're at one of the events, she notices that his ex-girlfriend is there, and she thinks she's doing him a favor by getting him involved in a fake dating scenario, but it turns out that he didn't want that at all. So the thing with this book is there was so much potential there, and the author does a really good job at making you completely empathize with the main female character. I felt like every pain that she went through, I went through too. And she does a really good job at like layering in the different elements of that throughout the book. However, a lot of the dialogue was borderline cringy and juvenile to me, and I really did not like the main male character very much. I didn't ever get that cozy Christmas feeling that I wanted, but overall it was a really cute one, and it makes me want to dive into some more from that author. The next one was The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Allie Carter. This one was like a cozy mystery romance holiday book. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 on Stars, 0 out of 5 on Spice. This one follows Maggie, whose entire life has just gone into shambles. She discovered that her husband was cheating on her with her best friend and has left her completely penniless. So when her editor offers her a mystery trip that she says will be completely life-changing, she feels like she has no choice but to take it. However, once she's there, she finds out that she's going to be with her arch nemesis at all times. All right, so this one, in terms of the cozy mystery aspect, it was like a Christmas version of Clue. I really enjoyed that part. I really enjoyed how the whodunit aspect was happening. As enjoyable as this book was, it was not a 5-star for me because the romance just made 0 sense to me. I really wish that the romance had just been completely left out of this book, or I guess I wish that it was done better. It just felt very cringy and weird and awkward. The main male character was like borderline stalkerish. Also, one of my pet peeves when it comes to reading is the overuse of nicknames, and in this one, he uses the nickname so much, I just couldn't take it. However, in terms of like the storytelling and the entertainment and all of that, that is dialed way up. It's definitely one that I think would be a cute like palette cleanser between heavier reads. Although the romance wasn't my favorite part, I think it is worth picking this one up. The next one was My Favorite Holidate by Lauren Blakeley. This one is a spicy Christmas romance. I gave it 4 out of 5 on stars and 3 out of 5 on spice. This one follows Fable, who is determined to make sure her sister has the wedding of her dreams, even if it means pretending that one of the groomsmen wasn't a total cheating scumbag. In order to sell the illusion that they had a cordial breakup, her boss steps in to offer a fake dating scheme that could give them both some benefits. This one is a hardcore, cheesy Christmas spicy romance. It definitely has intense cheese factors here, but it also had high Christmas vibes. I really enjoyed the characters. The spice was dialed way up, which I enjoy more plot than spice, but if you're the type who enjoys more spice than plot, this one would probably be even better for you because the spice was definitely there, and it's definitely not vanilla spice. It starts to dip into another territory. I think this one is definitely one of those books that it's a good thing it's a Christmas book because there are some things that you're like, okay, that would never happen in real life. But I feel like when you're reading a Christmas romance, you're a little bit more forgiving. But overall, I think it's a really cute, cozy Christmas romance that if you're into spice would probably be a good book to pick up. The next one was called My December Darling by Lauren Asher. This one is a spicy romance. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, 1 out of 5 on spice, and it is a Christmas spicy romance, I should say. This one follows Catalina, who's on a mission to mend her relationship with her sister, and it starts with convincing her that it's okay that she's marrying her ex-boyfriend. And it also comes with her having to play nice with the best man who puts on a very too good to be true persona that she can't get behind. So this one is a shorter book. It's like 250 pages. I really enjoyed the characters on this one. They had a little bit of like a dorky vibe that you wouldn't expect that gets layered into it that I thought was really fun. In this one, both of them actually work in the medical industry, so it was kind of cool to have a little bit of the hospital elements added in. I had a hard time connecting with the main female character because she's very guarded and closed off. I felt like more could have been done in terms of, even if that's what she's portraying to other people in the book, that as a reader, I feel like there should have been more work done for me to like empathize and find compassion for her. But overall, I really enjoyed those background hospital elements. There were some really heartfelt moments there. I really enjoyed the family dynamic that was happening. So overall, I think it was a cute one to pick up. Definitely one you could get on your radar for next holiday season. Next up was a cute little novella that I read. This was a historical romance novella called Ivy and Intrigue by Laura Rollins. And it follows Lady Margaret, who has an opportunity to spend Christmas with her friends, but her brother makes the conditions that she not only needs to bring a lady's companion with her, but she must be with Mr. Rockwell as well. He is a very grouchy, hard to approach person that she likes to try and rile up, but she doesn't really do a very good job at it. Once they're at the family estate, a precious jewel goes missing, and the both of them decide to team up to try and solve the mystery. So this one was a novella, 125 pages, though whodunit was handled really cute. I think the characters were really cute. Their entire story was really cute. It was just one of those ones that just perks your spirits up a little bit, but there's not like a heavy commitment to read 500 pages or something. So if you're looking for something in between heavier reads, this one would be a fast and easy one to pick up. I don't know if I said my star rating. 4 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice for that one. All right, the next one that I read was called All I Want Is You by Fallon, Ballard. And this one I gave a 4.25 out of 5 on stars and 1 out of 5 on spice. So this one follows Jessica, who used to absolutely love the Christmas season. However, her boyfriend had broken up with her right before Christmas, and so she just lost all of her Christmas spirit. This year is going to be the hardest Christmas yet since breaking up because she's going to have to present him with an award, and they end up getting snowed in together, having to face the reason why they broke up. This one was super cute. I love to read, and this book was about 2 authors. It was the ultimate book for me because I just loved the whole author element. I also loved the dynamics of how they worked through exactly what happened with their breakup. There was a second chance romance happening, and there was also a little bit of a dual timeline happening. But what I really enjoyed in this one is that the author spent much more time in present day and just sprinkled in the past little by little. I also felt like it was very understandable and very healthy and mature the way that the breakup is handled in this book, and how how they overcome it in the book. I felt like it actually felt genuine, whereas a lot of times when you're reading romances, it's more best case scenario, which is obviously a vibe. There's a reason why that happens in romance, because sometimes you want the best case scenario because you want to be able to have the most dreamy situation possible. But in this one, it felt a lot more relatable, a lot more real life, and I just really enjoyed it. My favorite part of this book too was the ending. There's a grand gesture that happens that I think was just handled so well. So that is definitely one that I would recommend picking up. It is a Christmas book, but the plot was more about working through what happened in their relationship. It's definitely heavier on the Christmas side, but it's almost like winter side because it's like a snowstorm. So it might be one that you want to pick up even though Christmas is over. The next one was called The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. I have seen Tessa Dare's name come up when it comes to historical romances so many times, but I just never had an opportunity to pick up one of her books because she's not on Kindle Unlimited and the wait has been kind of long on Libby for her. But anyways, I finally got my hands on one and I'm so glad that I did. I can see why she's so popular. This one I gave a 4.5 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice. This one follows Emma, who barges into the home of a duke and demands payment for a wedding dress that she was commissioned to make for his former fiance who has not paid her. He's completely intrigued by her boldness and realizes quickly that she meets all of the requirements he needs for a duchess and ends up making her an offer that she cannot refuse. This book was just done so well. The witty banter between the two characters was just so good. Emma has a history of being part of society, but she currently works as a seamstress, so she really understands both worlds. And I think that that was a really great element to have in this book. And she pushes back on the Duke quite a bit with the way that his thought process is. So I just really enjoyed that. I loved their love story. I love how it all comes together, and the dry humor was just my favorite part of this. So if you're into dry humor and you want some type of a romance, I would 100% picking this one up. Okay, the next one was called The Wrong Drive by Annie Wilde. This one is a dark romance. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 for stars, 3 out of 5 for spice. This one follows Emerson, who's on her way to try and save her relationship with her boyfriend, and she ends up turning down the wrong road and gets trapped in a cabin with somebody who doesn't seem to be mentally stable. So this one was incredibly deranged and very unhinged. There's definitely an audience out there for this book. If you're looking for some type of like toxic and suspenseful book, I could definitely see people loving this book. I would, however, recommend reading content warnings because it's a soldier who struggles deeply with PTSD in this book. So I would definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings for that. But overall, I think that if you're looking for more of a suspenseful, dark, and twisty style romance, this one would be for you. I felt like there were some moments that were super compelling and it kept me wanting to read, but then it would kind of get washed out by some moments that were super cringy. So overall, it just wasn't a love for me, but like I said, I think there's definitely an audience out there that would love it. The next one that I'm going to talk about is a mixture of novellas from 4 different authors, and the collection is called How the Duke Stole Christmas. The first novella in it is called Meet Me at Mayfair by Tessa Dare, and this follows Louisa, who needs a Christmas miracle. Her and her entire family are about to be evicted from their home because a new duke has taken over. So she heads to a ball to try and find herself a husband and ends up stumbling upon the duke who's about to kick her family out. That one I gave a 4 out of 5 for stars. There is some spice in it, so I'd rate it at a 1 out of 5 for spice. The characters were witty and interesting. I felt like she does a good job in this one of calling out the duke's privilege without being too preachy. So overall, I thought it was a really cute novella. The next one was called The Duke of Christmas Present by Sarah McLean. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. This is another author that I've been wanting to dive into, and this one didn't impress me too much. It follows Eben. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. He's a duke who had lost the love of his life because of his obsession with getting his dukedom back on track. And she suddenly reappears and lets him know that she's about to marry another, and all of their feelings come rushing back to them. So this one, the first half of the novella really dragged for me, which is crazy because it's so short. I felt like they were both just so irritated with each other at times, and it was just kind of a weird vibe. But then there's some really romantic elements that come in that started to save it a little bit for me. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 for stars and 1 out of 5 for spice. Definitely was not my favorite of the bunch, but one that I'm not mad that I read. The next one was called Heiress Alone by Sophie Jordan, And this one was my favorite one of the bunch. This one I give a 4.5 out of 5 for stars, 1 out of 5 for spice. This one follows Annis, who is accidentally left behind by her entire family, and she's stuck out in the Scottish Highlands, and because of an impending snowstorm, she's probably not going to be able to reconnect with her family for months. So she settles in with the housekeeping staff, but suddenly a duke shows up at the door to let them know that they need to leave because there's some dangerous thieves in the area that have been breaking into the homes, and he insists that they all go stay with him instead. I thought this one was so cute. I honestly wish that it was a full novel because I would have eaten it up. Basically, the girl that's in it, she's from a large family, and her family is obsessed with the idea of marrying into titles, and so her mom is one of those meddlesome matchmakers, and the duke knows it, so he has this impression of the entire family that they're all like that, but she's not like that. So the first half of the book is really spent working through the assumptions that they make of one another, and I thought that was really well done. So I wish that it had been a longer one because I really loved that dynamic. The next one was called Christmas in Central Park, and this one was by Joanna Shoup. This one was a historical romance, but it was actually set in New York, which was really cool because most of the historical romances that I read are set in the UK somewhere, so it was cool to have that New York element. And then also the other 3 books that are in this are about actual dukes that were like titled in the UK, but this one is actually just somebody named Duke, so I thought that was a really cool way to mix it up. This one follows Rose, who has a column in the newspaper, and she takes on a persona of Mrs. Walker, and everybody that reads the newspaper articles thinks she's a married, established lady living in New York in a beautiful home, and she's an expert at homemaking and everything that goes along with it, such as entertaining and things like that. Well, there's a sudden shift in leadership, and one of the owners is desperate to rebuild some rapport with the board. So he turns to Rose, thinking that she is actually Mrs. Walker, and wants her to host a party for the board. But the problem is she doesn't have a beautiful estate to do it at. This one I give a 4 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice. I really enjoyed the plot on this one. I thought it was a really interesting one. It had a lot of like the mistaken identity elements, and it was understandable why she was keeping a secret identity, which I think is important because sometimes in books you're like, dude, you really didn't even need to hide yourself. But in this one, it does make sense. I think there could have been a little bit more groveling done when it comes to it, but overall, I thought it was a really cute one. And this entire collection of novellas, I definitely think is worth your time. Okay, the next one that I read was yet another historical romance. This one was called A Scandalous Kind of Duke by Mia Vinci. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 on stars, 1 out of 5 on spice. So this one follows Leo, who is determined to give marriage another shot, but this time he doesn't want to go into it with any illusions. He just wants to find somebody who is a well-respected lady out in society. But the problem is that he has a very close friend named Juno, who is an artist who does not have the best reputation, and in order for him to be respectful towards his future wife, he's going to have to cut off relations with her, and he doesn't really want to. This one actually took me like months to get into. I had been at like the 20-25% mark forever. I kept just reading chapter by chapter with it, and that's not normally like me. Normally I'm the type where once I pick up a book, I just want to read it all the way through, but this one just was not gripping me at all. However, once I got past probably like the 35% mark, I started getting really invested in it, and I really enjoyed the way that the author works through a lot of the emotional things that were going on. It definitely had a lot of frustrating moments and a lot of like hot and cold moments that is not my favorite, but I felt like the background characters and the way that they all support and come behind the main female character really worked well. So overall, I think it's a cute one. I really like Mia Vinci quite a bit. One of her books, A Wicked Kind of Husband, actually made it into my top 24 of 2024. So if you're looking for a really well done historical romance, I would definitely recommend that one from her. Okay, next up, I read Karma's Kiss by R.S. Gray. R.S. Gray is one of the ones that I always know I can turn to get a very well done book. This one, however, was not one of my favorites from her, but I don't want to discourage you from reading others from her because she's a really good writer. This one was a 3 out of 5 for me, 1 out of 5 on spice. So this one follows Madison, who returns to her hometown after her perfect life has gone up in flames, and she immediately runs into the town's golden boy Sawyer, and her best friend come up with a plan to try and serve him some of his own medicine from when they were in high school, but she quickly realizes that the man that's standing before her is no longer that same boy that she used to know. I loved a lot about this book, but I disliked a lot about this book. If you guys were ever into the movie Sweet Home Alabama, it has a little bit of that vibe to it, where like a girl has gone off and moved to the city and had like a super accomplished life and all of this stuff, and then comes back to her hometown. And I really enjoyed that part. I really loved the small town element and the background characters. There was some like gossip happening, but it was not like the mean, spiteful gossip. It was more like the good-natured gossip where people care about you, so they gossip about you. I don't know how to explain that well, but that's the vibe that it had there. The characters, though, I don't know. The miscommunication to me just felt really weird. It didn't feel like it was necessary. So I think that something else could have been done to make the dynamic make a little bit more sense. But overall, it was a cute one. Definitely not one that I'm sad that I read, but it's also not one that I'd be like, you need to go read this now. And then the last one that I read for the month of December and the entire year was the book Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I think the genre is young adult fantasy, possibly. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 on stars, 0 out of 5 on spice. There is no spice in it, but romance is definitely a factor. It's just there's no explicit scenes. So this one follows Peyton, who has spent years hiding her true identity, but she's suddenly thrust into the spotlight when she saves the prince. Because now all of a sudden everybody knows who she is, she ends up getting selected for a deadly challenge, and she's gonna have to fight for her life even more now. You guys, I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but I have seen this book forever come up on every single list saying you must read this book. And so I have been excited to read it forever, but I also have this thing where if things are overhyped, I tend to put it off. And that's what happened with this one. I've had it in my queue forever and then never picked it up. And now I'm kind of mad I picked it up at all because I just really didn't like it that much. There's elements from other fantasies that just felt like the author just kind of like picked a bunch of them, threw them all together, and then didn't really build on them. Because I get it, when it comes to fantasies, especially the ones that aren't super complicated, there's only so much material out there. So I get that they're going to kind of take a lot of elements from other areas. But the fantasies that do that generally build on it in some way. And I just felt like that didn't happen here. It just all fell really flat to me. I really didn't enjoy the characters. I wasn't really invested in them. And it ends on a cliffhanger, but I honestly don't know if I'll even continue to read on because I just was not that intrigued. So I'd love to know if you read this one because I know it's one of those ones that went viral and a bunch of people loved it. So that wraps up the entire month of December, all of the books that I read. My top 3 favorite books were definitely The Love Haters by Katherine Center, The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare, and A Seasonal Pursuit by Rebecca Connelly. So those are my top 3 books. If you're walking away from this wanting to know which ones I 100% recommend picking up, those are my top on the list. However, The Love Haters does not come out until the end of May, so my backup would be All I Want Is You by Fallon Ballard. And then normally at the end of each quarter, I do a wrap up and go over all of my 5-star reads from that quarter, but I actually only had one book in this quarter, in the months of October, November, and December, that was a 5-star for me. And that one we actually chatted about in this video, and that was The Love Haters by Katherine Center. That one is scheduled to release on May 20th. I absolutely loved it. And in the meantime, until you can get to that one, go read The Rom-Commers by her, because that was one of my favorite books last year. And if you need even more book recommendations, I have a video of my top 24 of 2024. I have you covered for 4 or 5 different genres of book recommendations. Now, I just want to chat a little bit about my book goals, because maybe if I say it out loud, it'll actually happen. I was recently watching a reading wrap up from one of my favorite channels, and that's Tyler Braun. His wife, Jessica Braun, has been one of the YouTubers I've watched for years and years and years. And because of watching her, I started watching his channel. They do Vlogmas every year, and at the end of the year, they go over a reading wrap up. And one of the challenges that he set for himself, which I'm super inspired by, is he's reading a book about every single United States president. And I just think that's so cool. However, I am not a biography girly. Most of the time, the way biographies are structured are just not for me. So I wanted to come up with something similar where I could do more educational reading and work in some type of a challenge. I want to read 1 book per month about a specific state. And it doesn't have to be about the overall state history or anything. It can just be one event in time that happened in that state. It can be about a person of influence that was in that state. It can be whatever I want it to be. So I came up with a list of 12 different books that I'm going to be reading reading this year that are about states or some type of event or person that occurred in that state. I will link my Goodreads down below, and if you see all of the books on my want to read one, there's some states that are already being worked in there. I've started off with the state of Maine. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I've lived in Virginia, I've lived in New Jersey, I've lived in Hawaii, and I've lived in Florida. I also lived in New Hampshire for like a very short amount of time. Is that everything? I've lived in 6 states total. So I definitely want to read about some of the states that I've lived in, but the one that called out to me the most was the main one. It's all about the lobster industry, and I just feel like that's going to be a really cool one to dive into, not something that I know a lot about. So I've got that one going, and I can already tell you, I'm going to put the picture up on the screen, that I'm in this book, and although it's not my normal, I usually read fiction, I am completely compelled by it. I am so captivated by the story. The author does an amazing job with the storytelling already, and I'm only a few chapters in. So in case you need some inspiration, maybe you could come up with some type of a challenge. I think another one that I'm going to try to do maybe next year, or maybe sprinkle it in this year, is I definitely want to read a lot about the national parks. I was also thinking of like women in the United States or something, like reading about influential women that have helped shape our country, something like that. I just think that would be really fun, and I'll be sprinkling that in with all of my other normal reading. And I definitely want to start working through the books that have been on my radar for far too long. I have a stack of books in my office that I got either through Book of the Month or from pre-ordering through Target or something like that, that I definitely want to work through. So I'm going to try and focus on not getting distracted by shiny new books that pop up, but really working on those ones that have been on my list for quite some time and clearing those out. I would love to know if you're setting any goals for yourself for reading in the year of 2025. My goal is to read 175 books. I read 200 last year, but I felt like towards the end I was getting really stressed about it, and I don't want to be in a position where I'm reading just to read. Anyways, so that wraps up this video. I hope you're walking away with at least one book recommendation. If you're looking for more book recommendations, please feel free to check out my book Instagram. It's at Kate Chapters. I'll put it up on the screen, and it's always linked in the description below. I hope I delivered whatever you needed when you clicked on that thumbnail, and I hope you have a magical day. Bye!